My dad begged me to come to them for the holiday. After a 6-hour flight, I came, and he opened the door and said, "You will babysit your sister's kids while we are going on family trip." Then, my sister said, laughing, "Don't wipe your snot on them, kids." They laughed until I shocked them with my announcement. My sister screamed, "My dad went crazy," and my mom begged, but then I left for good. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am, sitting in my apartment in Seattle, finally ready to tell you all what happened during what was supposed to be a family reunion, but turned into the day I finally cut ties with my toxic family for good. So, I 28 female moved here 5 years ago from Ohio, partly for the job opportunities, but mostly to put some serious distance between me and my family. Trust me, by the time you hear this whole story, you'll understand why that distance was necessary. Growing up, I was always the odd one out in my family. My parents, Linda and Robert, both in their early 60s now, had my sister Chloe when they were young. She's 31, 3 years older than me, and from the moment I was born, it was clear that I was the unwanted surprise baby who messed up their perfect little family unit. Chloe was everything my parents wanted in a daughter. She was popular in school, always had boyfriends, got married young to this guy named Brad who works in sales, and started popping out kids like it was her job. She's got 3 kids now: Emma, who's 8, Jake, who's 6, and baby Lily, who just turned 2. Meanwhile, I was the nerdy kid who spent more time with computers than people, got good grades that nobody seemed to care about, and chose career over marriage and kids. The favoritism in my family wasn't even subtle. It was so obvious that teachers at school used to comment on it. I remember when I won the state science fair in high school, I came home all excited to tell my parents. Mom barely looked up from folding Chloe's laundry and said, "That's nice, honey. Did you remember to pick up your sister from her friend's house like I asked?" Meanwhile, when Chloe got her first job at a local restaurant, they threw her a party. When she got engaged, they paid for a huge wedding that cost more than my entire college tuition. When she had her first kid, they bought her and Brad a house with a down payment that wiped out most of their savings. And when I graduated college with honors and got my first job in tech, I got a card in the mail with a $20 bill inside and a note that said, "Congratulations on your little computer job." The pattern continued into adulthood, getting worse as the years went on. Every family gathering was centered around Chloe's life, Chloe's kids, Chloe's problems. I'd sit there listening to endless conversations about Emma's dance recitals, or Jake's Little League games, or how exhausted Chloe was from being such a devoted mother, while any attempt I made to talk about my work or my life was met with polite disinterest at best. I remember one Thanksgiving when I tried to tell them about a major project I'd completed at work, something that had taken months and had saved my company over $500,000. Dad literally interrupted me mid-sentence to ask Chloe about Jake's upcoming school play. When I tried to finish my story later, Mom said, "That's nice, dear, but we don't really understand all that computer stuff. Tell us something we can relate to." The worst part wasn't even the favoritism itself. It was how they treated me like I was some kind of charity case because I chose a different path, because I prioritized my career over having kids, because I moved across the country, because I didn't settle down in the same small town where they all still lived. I was somehow less than, broken, incomplete. A cautionary tale of what happens when a woman focuses too much on work and not enough on her biological clock. My mom would constantly make these passive-aggressive comments about how I was missing out on what really matters in life, and how I needed to stop being so selfish and think about giving them grandchildren. She'd send me articles about fertility declining with age, forward me Facebook posts about women who regretted focusing on their careers, and make pointed comments about how lonely my life must be. Dad would chime in with gems like, "All that education and fancy job won't keep you warm at night," and "What's the point of success if you don't have anyone to share it with?" He'd constantly bring up men from our hometown who were still single, suggesting I should come back and settle down with someone normal instead of being so picky and career-focused. But the absolute worst was Chloe herself. She had this way of making everything a competition, even when I wasn't competing. She'd make these backhanded comments about how lucky I was to only have to worry about myself, how simple my life must be without kids to tie me down, how I could afford nice things because I was selfish with my money instead of spending it on a family. Whenever I accomplished something, she'd find a way to minimize it or turn the attention back to herself. When I got promoted to senior engineer, she said, "Well, it's probably easier to focus on work when you don't have real responsibilities. I'd love to see how you'd handle having 3 kids demanding your attention all day." When I bought my first car, she said, "Must be nice to have all that disposable income when you're only supporting yourself. Try feeding a family of 5 on one income." And when I told them I was moving to Seattle, she laughed and said, Running away won't solve your problems, Maya. You can't hide from growing up forever. Sooner or later, you're going to have to face reality and accept that career success doesn't mean anything if you don't have a family. The comments about my appearance were particularly cruel. Chloe had always been the conventionally pretty one, blonde and social with perfect makeup and designer clothes, while I was the brunette bookworm with glasses, social anxiety, and a wardrobe that consisted mainly of jeans and t-shirts. She never let me forget the difference either. Even as adults, she'd make these jokes about how I needed to learn how to do my makeup or how I dressed like a teenager. She'd offer to take me shopping for grown-up clothes or suggest I get highlights to brighten up my look. The snot comment she made later wasn't out of character for her at all. She'd been making digs about my appearance and social skills for years. One particularly painful memory stands out from when I was about 25. We were at a family barbecue, and I'd been telling my aunt about a coding boot camp I'd started volunteering with, teaching kids from low-income families basic programming skills. I was really passionate about it, excited to talk about something I cared about. Chloe, who'd been half listening while chasing Jake around the yard, suddenly jumped into the conversation. "That's so sweet that Maya has time for hobbies like that," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wish I had that kind of free time, but when you have real responsibilities like children, you just don't have the luxury of playing around with computers for fun." My aunt looked confused. "But isn't that Maya's job? Computer programming?" Chloe waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, she works with computers, sure. But what Maya does is just different from real careers, you know? It's not like being a teacher or a nurse or something that actually helps people. It's more like a hobby that happens to pay money." The casual dismissal, the complete misunderstanding of what I did for a living, the implication that my work wasn't real or meaningful, it was all delivered with that same sweet smile that made it impossible to call her out without looking like the unreasonable one. After I moved to Seattle, I thought things might improve. Distance makes the heart grow fonder and all that. But the phone calls and texts were just more of the same. Every conversation somehow circled back to how well Chloe was doing, how cute her kids were, how proud they were of their real daughter who had her priorities straight. They'd ask about my life in the most superficial way possible. "How's work?" they'd say. And if I tried to explain anything about my projects, or my team, or my accomplishments, their attention would drift. But they could talk for hours about Emma's latest school project, or Jake's soccer team, or how Chloe was such a natural mother who was doing such important work raising the next generation. I started limiting contact. First, I stopped calling them. Then I stopped answering their calls as often. I'd respond to texts late, keep conversations short, make excuses about being busy with work. It wasn't malicious. I just got tired of feeling like crap every time we talked. The breaking point came about 2 years ago, during what was supposed to be a casual family video call. I'd just gotten a major promotion and was excited to share the news. I'd been working toward this position for 3 years, and it came with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to lead a team of 12 developers. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said when I told them. But she was clearly distracted, making faces at baby Lily, who Chloe was holding just off camera. "Chloe, show Maya how Lily waves now!" The rest of the call was devoted to watching Lily clap her hands and make baby noises, while everyone cooed over how adorable she was. My promotion, which represented years of hard work and was a significant milestone in my career, got about 30 seconds of attention before being completely forgotten. But then, something changed about 6 months ago. The calls became more frequent, more desperate. Dad would call and ask when I was coming to visit, and when I'd make non-committal noises about being busy, he'd get this weird tone in his voice, almost pleading. Mom started sending me these long texts about how much they missed me, how the family wasn't the same without me, how they'd been thinking a lot about mistakes they'd made, and wanted to make things right. The messages were more emotional than anything I'd ever received from her, full of words like regret and love and second chances. At first, I thought maybe they were finally realizing how they'd been treating me. Maybe they wanted to make amends. Maybe my absence had made them understand what they'd lost. But then I talked to my cousin Jessica, who lives in the same town and sees my family regularly. She told me what was really going on. Turns out, Chloe and Brad were having serious financial problems. Brad had lost his job 6 months earlier, some kind of company downsizing situation, and hadn't found anything else despite supposedly looking. They were behind on their mortgage, maxed out their credit cards, and were basically broke. They'd already borrowed money from my parents twice, draining most of my parents' modest retirement savings. But here's the kicker. They were planning some big family vacation for Christmas, a week-long trip to a resort in Florida that they'd apparently been planning for over a year, back when Brad still had his job and money wasn't an issue. The deposits were non-refundable, and they were too proud to cancel it and admit they couldn't afford it anymore. So they needed someone to watch Chloe's kids while they went on this vacation they couldn't afford, with money they'd borrowed from my parents' retirement fund. That's when it clicked. The increased contact, the sudden interest in having me visit for the holidays, the emotional messages about missing me and wanting to make amends. It was all building up to asking me to babysit while they went on vacation without me. I should have seen it coming, but part of me was still hoping that maybe, just maybe, they actually wanted to spend time with me for once. That maybe they'd realized how badly they'd treated me and genuinely wanted to repair our relationship. The call came 3 weeks before Christmas. Dad called on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner, and his voice had this forced cheerfulness that immediately put me on guard. Maya, sweetheart, how's my baby girl doing? He never called me sweetheart or baby girl. Ever. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time he'd used any kind of endearment with me that wasn't dripping with condescension. I'm fine, Dad. What's up? Can't a father just call to check on his daughter? We've been thinking about you so much lately. Your mother and I were just saying how much we miss having you around for the holidays. I stirred my pasta and waited for the real reason for the call. There was always a real reason. You know, he continued, his voice getting more animated, it's been 3 years since you've been home for Christmas. 3 years, Maya. That's too long. Way too long. Family should be together during the holidays. I know, Dad. Work's just been really busy, and the flights are expensive during Christmas. And, oh, nonsense about the flights, he interrupted, which was also weird because Dad never interrupted people, especially not to dismiss practical concerns. Money shouldn't keep family apart. Tell you what, your mother and I have been talking, and we want to buy your ticket. Consider it an early Christmas present. That stopped me cold. My parents, who had never once offered to help with travel expenses before, who had made me pay for my own flights home even when I was a broke college student living on ramen noodles, were offering to buy my ticket? These were the same parents who told me I needed to learn the value of money when I'd asked if they could help with my textbooks sophomore year. The same parents who'd made me get a job at 16 to pay for my own car insurance while they bought Chloe a brand new car for her 18th birthday. That's really generous, Dad. But no buts, we insist. We've already looked at flights. There's one that gets in on December 22nd. Perfect timing for Christmas. We'll pick you up at the airport, have a nice family dinner that night, then Christmas Eve and Christmas Day together. What do you say? The eagerness in his voice was almost desperate. This definitely wasn't just about wanting to see me. Dad, what's really going on? This doesn't sound like you. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, less forced, more genuine, but somehow that made it worse because it felt manipulative in a different way. Maya, I know things haven't been perfect between us, but you're our daughter, and we love you, and we want you home for Christmas. We want to make up for lost time. We want to be a real family again. Is that so hard to believe? The thing is, it was hard to believe. After years of feeling like an afterthought, of being treated like the consolation prize daughter, of having my accomplishments ignored and my choices constantly criticized. Yes, it was very hard to believe that they suddenly wanted me around just for the sake of having me around. But there was something in his voice, something that sounded almost vulnerable, that made me hesitate. What if I was wrong? What if they really had realized how badly they'd treated me? What if this was their way of trying to make amends? I don't know, Dad. I've already made plans with friends here. Please, Maya. He actually said please, which was something I'd maybe heard from him 5 times in my entire life. Your mother's been crying every night about how she misses you. She keeps looking at old photos of when you were little, talking about how she wishes she could go back and do things differently. Chloe asks about you all the time. The kids barely know their aunt. Please just come home. Just this once. I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was a trap, that they wanted something from me. But there was this tiny, pathetic part of me that had never stopped hoping that someday my family would actually want me around. The part of me that still remembered being 7 years old and desperate for my parents' approval. The part that had spent 28 years trying to figure out what was wrong with me that made me so easy to dismiss and ignore. If I come, I said slowly, I want to spend actual time together. Not just sitting around while everyone talks about Chloe's life. I want us to actually talk, to try to work on our relationship. I want to feel like I'm part of the family, not just an observer. Of course, sweetheart. That's exactly what we want too. We want to hear all about your life in Seattle, your job, everything. We want to really reconnect as a family. No distractions, no drama, just us. He sounded so sincere, so hopeful, against every instinct I had, against years of experience telling me this was a bad idea. I found myself saying, okay, okay, I'll come. The relief in his voice was palpable. Oh, Maya, that's wonderful. That's just wonderful. Your mother's going to be so happy. We'll have the best Christmas ever, I promise. The whole family together again, just like old times. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my half-eaten dinner, wondering if I'd just made a huge mistake, but it was too late now. The ticket was booked, the plans were made, and despite everything, I found myself actually looking forward to seeing my family again. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they really had changed. Maybe Christmas would actually be about family for once, instead of being another reminder of how little I mattered to them. The 6-hour flight from Seattle to Cleveland gave me plenty of time to think about what I wanted to say to my family, how I wanted to approach the visit. I decided to be open, but cautious, to give them a genuine chance to prove that they really wanted to rebuild our relationship, but to be ready to leave early if things went south like they always did. I had also decided not to tell them about my recent promotion to principal engineer, or about the fact that I was seeing someone, a great guy named Alex who I'd met through work, and who actually listened when I talked about my projects, who was proud of my accomplishments, who treated me like my career mattered. I wanted to see if they'd actually ask about my life before volunteering information they'd probably just dismiss anyway. I wanted to see if they were genuinely interested in who I'd become, or if they just wanted me there for some ulterior motive. The flight was delayed due to weather, so by the time I landed in Cleveland, it was already evening. I caught the shuttle to the rental car place, drove the hour and a half to my hometown through increasingly familiar landscape, and pulled into my parents' driveway at almost 9 p.m. The house looked exactly the same as it always had, a modest 2-story colonial with white siding and green shutters. The Christmas decorations were up, twinkling lights around the windows, and a wreath on the front door. It looked warm and welcoming and normal, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe things really could be different this time. I could see warm light spilling from the living room windows, and I could hear voices and laughter inside. My heart did this stupid little skip thing at the thought of being part of a family gathering where I was actually wanted, where people were genuinely happy to see me. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and walked up to the front door, taking a deep breath before knocking. I could hear footsteps approaching, and then Dad opened the door. He looked older than I remembered, more lines around his eyes, his hair grayer and thinner, but he smiled when he saw me, and for a split second, I thought everything was going to be okay. Maya! You made it! He pulled me into a hug, and I hugged him back, breathing in the familiar smell of his cologne and aftershave. For a moment, it felt like coming home. Hi, Dad. Sorry I'm so late. The flight was delayed, and then the drive took longer than I expected with the weather. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. You're here now. That's what matters. That's all that matters. He stepped back and looked at me, still smiling, but something in his expression shifted. It became more calculating, like he was sizing me up for something. Listen, honey, before you come in, there's something we need to discuss. And just like that, the warm, fuzzy feelings evaporated. Here it was, the real reason they'd wanted me here. What kind of something? I asked, even though I was pretty sure I already knew. Dad glanced back into the house, then stepped outside and partially closed the door behind him, like he didn't want the others to hear what he was about to say. Well, the thing is, we've got this family trip planned. A vacation to Florida. It's been booked for months, all paid for, non-refundable. We leave the day after Christmas. I waited for him to continue, but he seemed to think he'd said enough. Okay, I said slowly. Have fun. Right, well, the thing is, it's an adults-only resort. No kids allowed. And Chloe's 3 kids, they need someone to watch them while we're gone. There it was. The real reason for the expensive plane ticket, the sudden interest in my presence, the guilt trips about family being important. You want me to babysit? It's not babysitting, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed this response. It's helping family. It's spending quality time with your niece and nephews. It's what families do for each other. For a week? Well, 6 days technically. We'd be back the 30th. I stared at him, trying to process what was happening. They'd flown me across the country, spent money they apparently didn't have on a plane ticket, made me think they actually wanted to spend Christmas with me. Also, I could watch Chloe's kids while they went on vacation without me. The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. You begged me to come home for Christmas, made me feel guilty about not visiting family, bought my plane ticket, told me you wanted to reconnect as a family and make up for lost time, all so I could babysit while you go to Florida without me. Dad had the grace to look a little ashamed, but not much. Mostly he just looked annoyed that I wasn't immediately agreeing to their plan. Maya, you don't understand. This trip was planned before we knew there'd be a problem with childcare. Chloe's regular babysitter had a family emergency, and we couldn't find anyone else on such short notice during the holidays. Your family. We knew we could count on you. Could count on me, I repeated, feeling the familiar burn of anger starting in my chest. When have you ever counted on me for anything? When have any of you ever asked me for help before? When have you ever treated me like family? That's not fair. What's not fair? I cut him off. Is lying to me to get me here. What's not fair is manipulating me with fake emotional appeals when all you wanted was free childcare. Dad's expression hardened, and suddenly he looked more like the father I remembered from childhood, the one who got impatient when I didn't immediately fall in line with whatever was expected of me. We didn't lie to you. We do want you here for Christmas. And this is part of being here. This is what family means, Maya. Making sacrifices for each other. Contributing instead of just taking. Making sacrifices, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. When has Chloe ever made a sacrifice for me? When have you or Mom ever made a sacrifice for me? When have any of you ever contributed to my life in any meaningful way? We bought your plane ticket. To manipulate me into free childcare? That's not a gift, Dad. That's payment for services rendered. Our voices were getting louder, and I could hear that the conversation inside had stopped. They were all listening now, probably wondering what was taking so long. Keep your voice down, Dad hissed. The kids are inside. Oh, now you're worried about the kids? The kids you're planning to dump on me so you can go on vacation? Dad's face was getting red now, the way it always did when he was angry, but trying not to show it. It was the same expression he'd had when I was a teenager, and didn't immediately comply with his expectations. You know what your problem is, Maya? You've always been selfish. Ever since you were little, it's always been about what you want, what's convenient for you. Your sister has 3 children to think about. She needs this vacation. She needs the break. And what about what I need? What you need, he said, his voice dripping with the same condescension I remembered from childhood, is to stop thinking about yourself for once and help your family. You need to grow up and understand that the world doesn't revolve around you. That's when the front door opened wider, and Chloe stepped out, holding baby Lily on her hip. She looked exactly the same as always. Blonde, pretty, perfect makeup even at 9 p.m. Everything about her screamed successful mom who has her life together. Maya, she said, her voice artificially bright in that way that immediately put me on edge. You finally made it. We were starting to worry the flight got canceled or something. I looked at her, then at Dad, then back at her. Did you know about this? About the real reason they wanted me here? Chloe's smile faltered for just a second, like she hadn't expected me to be so direct. What do you mean? I mean, did you know they were going to ambush me with babysitting duty the second I walked in the door? It's not babysitting, Chloe said, using the same line Dad had used, which told me they definitely coordinated this approach. It's spending time with your niece and nephews. They're so excited to see their Aunt Maya. Emma's been talking about it for weeks. Their Aunt Maya, who they barely know because no one ever invites me to visit except when they need free childcare? Chloe shifted Lily to her other hip and gave me that patronizing look she'd perfected over the years, the one that made me feel like a difficult child who wasn't being reasonable. Maya, I know you're not used to being around kids, living alone like you do, but it's really not that hard. They're pretty self-sufficient at this age. Emma can help with Jake, and Lily mostly just sleeps and plays. You won't have to do much besides make sure they don't burn the house down. The casual dismissal, the assumption that of course I'd go along with their plan, the complete lack of any acknowledgement that maybe asking someone to watch 3 kids for a week with 0 notice wasn't reasonable. It was all so typically Chloe. And what if I say no? I asked. Both Dad and Chloe looked genuinely shocked, like the possibility hadn't occurred to them. What do you mean no? Chloe asked, her voice getting a little sharper. I mean, what if I say I didn't come here to babysit your kids while you go on vacation? What if I say I came here because Dad told me you all wanted to spend Christmas with me? Dad stepped forward, his expression getting more frustrated. Maya, be reasonable. We do want to spend Christmas with you. We'll have Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the day after. That's plenty of time for family bonding. Plenty of time for what? For you to make me feel like an outsider while you all talk about Chloe's perfect life? For Mom to ask me again why I don't have kids yet? For everyone to act like my career doesn't matter, because I don't have a husband and babies to show for my life. Your career, Chloe said, with a little laugh that made my skin crawl. Right. Well, the thing is, some of us have actual responsibilities that we can't just abandon. Some of us can't just drop everything and go on vacation whenever we want because we have people depending on us. There it was. The same old dismissive attitude, the same old assumption that my life was somehow easier or less important than hers because I'd chosen a different path. Is that what you think? That my life is just easy and responsibility-free? Well, isn't it? Chloe shrugged, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. You live alone, you answer to nobody, you can do whatever you want whenever you want. You don't have to worry about school schedules or doctor's appointments or making sure little people are fed and clothed and happy. Must be nice to only have to think about yourself. I stared at her, then at Dad, who was nodding along like Chloe was making perfect sense. Neither of them had any idea what my life was actually like, what my work involved, what kind of responsibilities I had. They'd never bothered to ask. You have no idea what my life is like, I said quietly. I know enough, Chloe replied, her voice getting more confident now that she thought she had the upper hand. I know you moved across the country to avoid family obligations. I know you prioritize work over relationships. I know you've never had to sacrifice anything for anyone else. So really, watching the kids for a few days should be a piece of cake for someone with so much free time. And that's when something inside me snapped. I was tired. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of being treated like a backup plan. Tired of having my choices and my life minimized and criticized by people who had never bothered to actually get to know me. Tired of being the family scapegoat, the disappointing daughter, the selfish sister who didn't understand what really mattered in life. Most of all, I was tired of pretending that any of this was okay. You want to know about sacrifice? I said, my voice getting stronger. You want to know about responsibility? Let me tell you about my life, Chloe. My real life, not the version you've all made up in your heads. Chloe rolled her eyes, shifting Lily again. Oh, here we go. Let me guess. Your job is super important and stressful, and we just don't understand how hard it is to work with computers all day. I make $180,000 a year, I said, cutting her off. Just got promoted to principal engineer last month. In 5 years, I've gone from junior developer to the second highest technical position in my company. That shut her up. Her mouth actually fell open a little. I own a 2-bedroom condo in one of the most expensive cities in the country. I have a retirement account that's already worth more than most people make in 2 years. I mentor junior developers. I speak at conferences. I've got job offers from Google and Amazon sitting in my email right now that I haven't even responded to yet. Dad's mouth had fallen open too. They were both staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But more importantly, I continued, my voice rising with years of suppressed frustration, I volunteer at a coding boot camp for underprivileged kids every weekend. I've helped 12 people get their first jobs in tech. I donate to 3 different charities every month. I've built websites for 2 local nonprofits for free. And I've been dating an amazing man named Alex for 8 months now, someone who actually listens when I talk about my work and treats me like my accomplishments matter. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear voices from inside the house, probably Mom and Brad wondering what was taking so long. So don't you dare, I said, looking directly at Chloe. Stand there and tell me I don't understand sacrifice or responsibility. Don't you dare act like my life is somehow less meaningful than yours because I chose a different path. And don't you dare assume that I'm going to drop everything to clean up your mess just because you decided to go on a vacation you can't afford. Maya, Dad started, but I wasn't done. You want to know the real tragedy here? I actually thought maybe you'd changed. Maybe you actually wanted me here. Maybe for once in my life, my family actually gave a damn about me as a person instead of what I could do for you. I turned to Dad, feeling 28 years of hurt and anger finally boiling over. But no, same old story. Maya only matters when you need something from her. Maya's life doesn't count unless it's useful to everyone else. That's when Mom appeared in the doorway, her face creased with worry and confusion. She was wearing the same apron she'd had for 15 years, the one that said World's Best Mom that Chloe had given her for Mother's Day. What's all the shouting about? Maya, you're here. She tried to rush forward to hug me, but I stepped back. Tell her, Dad. Tell Mom why I'm really here. Dad looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. Maya, please, let's not... Tell her. We need Maya to watch the kids while we go to Florida, he said quietly, like he was confessing to a crime. Mom's face fell, and I could see her trying to calculate how to salvage the situation. She glanced between Dad and me, then forced a bright smile. Well, that would be wonderful. she said with the kind of forced enthusiasm that fooled absolutely no one. Maya loves spending time with the children. Don't you, honey? No, I said firmly. I don't. I mean, I don't dislike them, but I don't love spending time with kids. Any kids. It's not my thing. And that's okay. Not everyone has to love kids. Not everyone has to want to be a parent or an aunt or whatever role you're trying to force me into. But Maya, Mom started, her voice getting that pleading tone I remembered from childhood when she was trying to convince me to do something I didn't want to do. But nothing. I'm not doing it. I'm not watching Chloe's kids while you all go on vacation without me. I'm not being the family babysitter so you can all have fun while I'm stuck here dealing with someone else's responsibilities. Chloe finally found her voice again, and she was furious. So what? You're just going to leave? Just like that? Run away again like you always do when things get difficult? I'm not running away. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to let you all treat me like garbage anymore. I'm choosing not to be manipulated and used and dismissed. We don't treat you like garbage, Mom protested, her voice getting higher. You're our daughter. We love you. Really? I asked, feeling something breaking open inside me. When was the last time any of you asked about my life? Not to get something from me, just because you were actually interested in who I am and what I'm doing? Silence. When was the last time you congratulated me on an accomplishment? When was the last time you acted proud of something I'd achieved? When was the last time any of you treated my career like it mattered? More silence. When was the last time any of you called me just to talk? Just because you missed me and wanted to hear my voice? The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of baby Lily starting to fuss in Chloe's arms. You can't answer, I said, because it's never happened. Because you don't see me as a person with my own life and feelings and accomplishments. You see me as a resource. Someone you can use when you need something. Someone you can ignore the rest of the time. I picked up my suitcase, which I'd never actually brought inside. Maya, don't do this, Dad said, his voice desperate now. Don't leave like this. We can work something out. We can find someone else to watch the kids. It's not about the kids, Dad. It's about the fact that you lied to me. It's about the fact that you manipulated me into coming here under false pretenses. It's about 28 years of being treated like the consolation prize daughter. I started walking toward my rental car, my heart pounding, but my steps steady. Where are you going? Mom called after me, her voice breaking. I'm going to a hotel for tonight. Tomorrow I'm flying back to Seattle. But it's Christmas, she said, like that somehow changed anything. I turned around one last time, looking at all of them standing there on the front porch. Dad red-faced and angry, Mom crying, Chloe holding Lily and looking stunned, like she couldn't believe I was actually walking away. Christmas is supposed to be about family, Mom. About people who love and support each other unconditionally. About being together because you want to be, not because you need something from each other. I looked at each of them. These people who shared my DNA but who had never really known me or cared to know me. I hope you figure out your childcare situation. I hope you have a great time in Florida. But I'm done. I'm done pretending this is a family that gives a damn about me as anything other than a convenient solution to your problems. Maya, please! Mom was sobbing now. Don't go! We'll cancel the trip. We'll stay home. We can work this out. But it was too late for that. The damage was done. The truth was out there now, and there was no taking it back. Goodbye, I said, getting into my car. Don't call me unless you're ready to apologize and actually mean it. Don't text me asking for favors. Don't contact me at all unless you're prepared to treat me like a human being instead of a resource to be exploited. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, still standing on the porch. Mom was crying, Dad was gesturing angrily, and Chloe was trying to calm down Lily, who had started crying too. I didn't look back again. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.